I'm Rantasmo, and Power Rangers needs more gay. I truly believe that for myself and many others, Rita Repulsa was our first gay icon before we really knew what that was. Consider Rita for just a moment. She's an outspoken woman working in a patriarchal industry, not unlike the cast of 9 to 5. She makes extremely strong fashion choices, not unlike the cast of 9 to 5. Basically, Rita Repulsa is Lily Tomlin, is what I'm getting at. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was a really formative show for me and many other people I know. It gave us epic battles between good and evil, a diverse cast, strong role models, boyfriend goals. Of course, the show and the production behind it were not without flaw, and I don't just mean the cheesy dialogue or the goofy costumes. In fact, I'd say that upon watching the show as an adult able to appreciate camp, those things are probably the show's greatest strength.
Recruit a team of teenagers with attitude.
Power Rangers was nothing if not a product of its time, and the ugly truth is that the 90s were not a great time to be gay. So it was upsetting but not entirely surprising to learn that David Yost, best known as the Blue Ranger, left the show after 4 seasons because of homophobic harassment from the producers and crew. And this was especially significant because Power Rangers has a considerable queer fan base. It would be easy for me to make a joke here about men in tight multicolored spandex, and I do think the show's undeniable campiness has something to do with its appeal to gay fans, but it might be a little bit simpler than that. The Rangers, and all superheroes really, represent a power fantasy. Everyone needs power fantasies now and again, but they're uniquely important to people who are, well, disempowered. Who among us hasn't wished to live in a world where people are rewarded for being good and kind? Where bullies and abusers are hilariously incompetent and always get their comeuppance? Where people from completely different backgrounds are all best friends? Since Power Rangers is geared towards such a young audience, and primarily boys, it's very light on romance, and when it is there, it's a very chaste, innocent version of romance. Tommy and Kimberly seem to be the only Rangers in the history of the series who have actually kissed each other. And I think in a way, the sexlessness of the characters helps open them up to queer interpretations. The absence of heterosexuality in a piece of media isn't quite the same as the presence of queerness, but sometimes we take what we can get. The recently released Power Rangers reboot movie not only gave us Elizabeth Banks having the time of her life, it also gave the Rangers' squeaky clean image something of an overhaul. This time they actually are teenagers with attitude. They get in trouble, they fight, they curse, and they have sex. Or at least, they have sexualities. This movie came out around the same time as Beauty and the Beast, which I talked about not too long ago. A lot of people have drawn a comparison between the two movies, and they do share certain similarities. The presence of a queer character in both movies was hyped up quite a bit before their release, while the actual presence of visible queerness is fairly minimal and somewhat ambiguous. Let me say up front, I don't at all mind Trini's sexuality being ambiguous. Having broadly queer and questioning characters is just as important as having definitively lesbian characters. The only qualm I have is that the fact that her sexuality is ambiguous is itself a little ambiguous.
Boyfriend troubles.
Yeah. Boyfriend troubles.
Girlfriend troubles?
I might be a little bit biased here because even though I felt the subtext there was pretty clear, the audience that I happened to be watching the movie with didn't seem to quite pick up on it. When Zach says the line "girlfriend troubles," I heard a few people in the audience laugh, presumably thinking that was supposed to be a joke. This is, in my opinion, a very well-crafted scene, but it's also subtle to the point where some people who weren't subject to the media hype might not pick up on the fact that Trini is questioning her sexuality. If she'd even just said something like "maybe" after Zach's line instead of just pausing meaningfully, I think that moment might have landed better. But I do think there are several distinctions that set Trini apart from the likes of LeFou. For one, believe it or not, Power Rangers is really just a much better written movie. And also, even though there aren't very many lines directly referencing it, I think that Trini's sexual identity more directly informs her character. If you saw the movie, you know that this version of the Power Rangers more or less match up with the characters in The Breakfast Club. And Trini is very much the Allison. She feels as though she doesn't fit in, so she isolates herself from her peers and her family.
She's like a ghost around here. She needs to start communicating.
June?
Say something.
I know it's a cliche for teenagers to say that their parents don't understand them, but for many queer teens, that's genuinely true. And I feel that this is something that comes across much more clearly than LeFou maybe having a crush on Gaston. The movie is very different from the TV show, but both of them are important to me. The show is a shiny, wholesome fantasy, where the movie is more grounded in angst and pathos. As a kid, the TV show taught me what it meant to be a hero, and the movie showed me that our idea of the types of people who can be heroes is beginning to expand and grow. And if there's one thing that the original size queen Rita Repulsa taught me, it's that growth is a good thing.
Magic wand!